be going up against Longer or up against Lojom. Longer's Priest has been banned away. That leaves him with Mage, Paladin, and Shaman. And Lojom's Shaman has been banned away, leaving him with Druid, Rogue, and Paladin. So that is from Longer, the Reno Priest deck actually having been banned away, which makes a certain amount of sense. It has proven itself to be relatively good against aggro, maybe a little bit more so than we thought it would. And then from Lojom, that is just an even Shaman. Nothing too special about that there, but that is going to leave the aggro Mage for Longer, the even Shaman, and then the odd Paladin. And then for Lojom, we have the odd Paladin, the aggro Druid, which put in some serious work in the previous series against odd Rogue in particular. And then he has his own odd Rogue there. Do you see either of these guys as being particularly favored with these lineups? Both very aggressive now after the bans.
It looks to me like Lojom has a slightly better lineup. I feel like Token Druid especially is like a very aggro versus aggro specialized deck, you know, especially looking at something like Token Druid versus, I guess there's no Rogue, but, you know, like something like Living Mana is extremely strong. Token Druid's really good at fighting for board. Lots of like 1/3s and 1/2s to deal with, you know, Pallies, 1/1s. I do like it a little bit more here, so we'll have to see.
All right. Well, we are going to be getting into game number 1. It's going to be Longer on his odd Paladin and Lojom on the odd Rogue. And you saw Lojom not looking too happy about that when he finds Baku in the opening mulligan. And in general, odd Paladin tends to be the aggro deck that can beat up on other aggro decks. It gives Rogue quite a bit of trouble. It gives even Shaman quite a bit of trouble, just because it plays the board game better than they do. So we'll have to see if Lojom can keep up here with the flood of recruits from the hero power of Longer, but it will be kind of difficult.
I was actually reading some of Lojom's, interview questions, because we were asking him a little bit before the game.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said was, he initially wanted to try a bunch of control decks to beat up the aggro decks, but it wasn't easy. And then eventually he settled on basically anti-aggro decks himself. So if you look at his choices of minions here, and even in the Rogue, he's running Dire Moles. It's a very anti-aggro minion, being like a 1/3. That's probably, there's no other card you'd rather see than a Dire Mole against Odd Pally turn 1. It's super good at trading. He's even running Tar Creeper, another anti-aggro. So Lojom actually should be pretty happy to run into a predominantly aggro lineup here for Longer.
Yeah, I think his lineup is one of the smartest curated, actually. In his even Shaman, he has Wild Pyromancer, Direwolf Alpha, Galaka Crawler. He's got the Tar Creepers in his Rogue. His Druid is just, it's designed to swarm against other aggro decks and take advantage of the fact that they can't clear the board that easily. They don't have spells to do it. It all has to happen through minion combat. So I really like the direction that he took with this, and my first thought when crafting a lineup for this tournament would have been control. I tend to lean towards control decks. I like setting the pace of the game, but the aggro decks in Wild are just so powerful that, you know what, sometimes it's just easier trying to play the aggro deck instead of going that extra mile to bring quad control.
Yeah, an interesting thing is Lojom has 4 Galaka Crawlers in his decks, and the only decks that he doesn't have Galaka Crawlers are his odd decks, like the odd Rogue and odd Pally. So he
Makes sense.
He likes that stuff. This should be an interesting match here. It looks like pretty standard openings on both sides. Lots of minions, which is good. That's what you want to see in these early game situations.
Lojom looked like he was starting to get a little bit ahead on the board here, but this muster for battle is going to be really, really strong. He can take 5 damage from the Warhorse Trainer, just go for the Firefly and the Flame Elemental, and continue trading over the Dire Mole into these recruits.
Right, that's actually a really nice line. Once you take out the Warhorse Trainer, you can even take a value trade from your Dire Mole. And Fireflies and Dire Moles are, they're basically the best way that Rogue has to deal with recruits. Lojom has a lot of these things. No Quartermaster yet for Longer. Longer might be having some weird plays next turn, maybe dropping a Lothab. Not really the best in this kind of matchup dynamic where mostly minion versus minion combat. Oh, interesting. Lojom's going for the charge, stop Quartermaster?
Yeah, looks like going into turn 5, he wants to make Quartermaster as weak as possible. Obviously, we can see that Longer doesn't have it, but Lojom doesn't know that. So here he's thinking if South Sea Deckhand could trade into a 3-3, he would love for that to happen. Might as well do it proactively.
Right. I like the play here. Longer is trying to get value out of the Divine Favor. If he plays Lotheb, he might be too slow in dumping his hand.
Yeah, that makes sense. Picking up the Muster for Battle and the Steward of Darkshire is really, really strong for turn 6. Great in combination together. And by playing the Divine Favor that turn, Longer had a bit of a weaker turn developing on board, but that's fine. He just needs to be able to continue applying pressure, and Divine Favor was not going to be that good for the remainder of the game.
Yeah, one of the things about this matchup is as the game gets longer, the Pally hero power starts snowballing. Rogue hero power, even as an odd rogue, you have a 2-2 weapon. It doesn't really matter if your weapon's a 2-2 weapon or a 1-2 weapon. It does effectively the same thing against 1-1s. So, rogue hero power in this matchup kind of falls off late game. You kind of eventually run out of resources because every time you attack a 1-1 with your weapon, you kind of lose a little bit of life. And eventually your life is gone, and Pally kind of will swarm you over with having 2 recruits a turn. These cards like Quartermaster eventually late game also kind of guarantees that Rogue is on a clock. You can't stop these. You can't stop the recruits forever.
Yeah. Exactly. There's only so much. The Rogue at some point needs to turn the corner and be able to actually take control and start hitting face. And it's looking like maybe Lojom has some of the tools to do that, but because he didn't play the Lotheb this turn, now Longer will be able to get down the Steward of Darkshire and the Muster for Battle. And Lojom is playing a couple copies of the Dark Iron Skulker, but that'll just pop off the Divine Shields. And now if Longer's able to pick up Quartermaster, I think he's pretty much going to lock this one up.
Yeah, it looks like Lojom, this might have been his last turn to turn the corner, as he said. This board is looking scary. Once the Divine Shields start coming, that's when you know you're in trouble. Once the Divine Shield... Oh, that's a card.
Okay. Well, you know what? Longer held on to the Muster for Battle because he was going to put as much pressure on the board with the South Sea Deckhand and the hero power, so you might as well not play Muster if you don't have to. And I was saying Dark Iron Skulker is not as good because of the Divine Shields, but it's still what Lojom needs here. It's still a start to being able to take this board back.
Yeah, that's going to allow him to take out the Steward of Darkshire, so at least the next Muster for Battle and Hero Power won't have Divine Shields. Lojom is still running out of life, though. You're going to have to swing into the 3-3 with your face, going down to 18. There's still more 1-1s are coming at you. Your board isn't very powerful after the Dark Iron Skulker. Wow, it doesn't even play it.
Okay, well, the only thing the Skulker would clear up is the South Sea Deckhand by itself. It would knock off the Divine Shields, but Lojom would still have to swing his dagger into the Steward of Darkshire. So I suppose he's thinking he can hold on to that for maybe a board when there are more recruits that don't have Divine Shield.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, especially next turn where oftentimes you might be faced with a Vine Cleaver in 7. So, just even more 1-1s coming down. It's a very common play on turn 7. Longer has to be respecting the potential for Dark Iron Skulker. It is open deckless, and this Fungalmancer is a great line against it.
Yep. Committing the hero power is fine. It's practically free because he wasn't going to be using the mana for something else. But again, Dark Iron Skulker only deals 2 damage to undamaged minions, so Patches survives, and this is going to be another 9 damage that Lojom is taking at the very least.
Yeah, Lojom's just not getting on board so he can start going face, right? Eventually he's just going to run out of health, and it looks like that point is very soon here. Now we have another pretty strong turn by Longer, just able to spend all his mana, creating another situation where Lojom kind of needs to deal with this board or risk immediately dying. You can't really deal with this board.
No. Longer clears up the Dark Iron Skulker because if there was another Dark Iron Skulker, then maybe Lojom could have dealt with enough of the board. But he's just going to shore that one up. Timeout would buy him time if he could play it, which he can't. There's 11 on board for Longer right now, but there is 12 with the Lights Champion from Muster for Battle. And Lojom's going to go ahead and give that one up. Game 1 going over to Longer on the Odd Paladin. Again, just a fantastic matchup against Odd Rogue.
Yeah, so looks like Longer is going to be playing from a little bit behind here.
Yeah, I mean, that comes down to queue order right there. He knows that one is really difficult to win. So that means he is going to have to maybe get a little bit fortunate in the next couple of games. He would have loved to have been able to queue his Druid into that Paladin deck. That would have been ideal for him. He could take advantage of the Pirates in the Paladin deck. He could get the Druid win out of the way, because now he has to go up against Mage and Shaman. And the Shaman, not playing any Pirates for the Galactic Crawlers to get any value from. And the Mage is probably a fine matchup for the Druid. It can be very difficult for them to deal with early pressure. So I'm not seeing the Mage being an issue for Lojom, but the Shaman potentially could be.
Yeah, especially with Lojom's lineup being so well designed against aggro, right? He has to feel like he's in such a good shape now. He has so he has 4 Galactic Crawlers left against. Actually, yeah, not much Galactic Crawlers left to eat.
No.
But still, just the design of it being like very anti-aggro should be fine.
Yeah, I am seeing maybe the Mage being a bit of a weak spot for Longer, because Paladin is great against the Mage. Druid should be quite good against the Mage as well. So it is possible that even though Lojom lost game number 1, that he's still in a pretty good position here. And again, that just comes down to deck building. That's entirely his preparation coming into this tournament, wanting to build anti-aggro decks, because control, he just thought wasn't a viable strategy in this tournament. And it does seem like, you know what, maybe his planning has gotten a bit of, the better of his opponents. We'll have to see what he decides to queue for game number 2. He is down 0-1, but that's nothing that you can't come back from in a Conquest format. In Last Hero Standing, losing the first game is a lot more debilitating. If you lose game 1, suddenly you're countering for game 2, and in a 5-game series, you're usually going to end up losing 3-2. But here we're going to be seeing Longer bring out the Mage deck. Lojom is on now his Rogue, and you can see even his Rogue has text for Paladin. He just wasn't able to find him in game number 1. He's got that Blood Knight available, but no dice.
Yeah, this generally could be this kind of matchup can generally be pretty hard for Rogue. Rogue is a class that doesn't have very much healing, and especially since in Wild there's Ice Block, right? So Ice Block, really, when you start turning the corner as Rogue and you finally start getting board control, they can just burn you out.
Yep, this is not the matchup that Lojom wanted. His Druid or his Paladin against the Mage would have been really well positioned. His Rogue would not. Aggro Mage versus any type of Rogue is usually one of the best matchups for the Aggro Mage. So we're going to have to see, can he manage to come back in another unfavored matchup? Because if he doesn't beat this Mage, then it's just the Shaman left for Longer. And even Shaman is just so well placed across the board. It doesn't have any really, really bad matchups. And then it would be very difficult for Lojom to win 3 in a row.
A key part of this matchup for Mage vs. Rogue is really to find a lot of your 3 health minions, like your Arcanologist and your Kirintor Mage, not minions like Sorcerer Apprentice. The hero power is so powerful early, especially against 2 health minions. Longer still decides to play Mad Scientist. I mean, it's just, even if he decides to play Mad Scientist first, it doesn't mean that's still not really good for him to have all these 3 health minions. He just wants to pull the secret early from the Mad Scientist and then start playing Arcanologist into Kirintor Mage. So Longer actually has probably the best, one of the best possible hands he could have wished for, being it's a perfect curve here for both players.
Yeah, this is fantastic for Longer. But even for Lojom, he's going to be able to very likely hero power this turn and go into the South Sea Captain.
Ooh, I kind of like this line. Okay, so Lojom does not want to get a South Sea Captain blown up by explosive runes. So he decides to play a bunch of 1-attack minions so that the Mad Scientist can't suicide and trade off, so that way he has basically a free reign to play South Sea Captain without getting blown up by runes. And this is kind of cool, because normally you just expect to see, okay, I'm going to hero power turn 2.
Yeah.
Hero power is so awesome in this matchup early, but this is a cool adaptation based on what his hand is.
This is nice, and he's going to be able to push some additional damage next turn with the South Sea Captain buffing the Pirates. And he even hits animated armor off of the Swashbuckler. It says your hero can only take 1 damage at a time. So if you play animated armor and your opponent fireballs your face, it's dealing 1 damage.
That's true. I didn't think about that. It's also nice with Rogue hero power, right? It allows you to punch things like Kirintor Mage, only taking 1 instead of 4.
It's maybe not as good as Ice Block, but it's It's actually pretty useful. If you get anything that you can use off of Swashbuckler, you're pretty happy about it.
Yeah, so this now Lojom develops his sassy captain safely without losing it to one of the secrets. But still, he's gonna have a hard time around these secrets anyways. His hand is a 4-drop, a 5-drop, and a 5-drop. So Explosive Runes is very effective against all of these things. Lojom's gonna want to pick up some cheap minions to throw into these secrets in the next turns.
Yeah, he's used 3 of his 1-drops already, but there's still plenty left in the deck for him to find in combination with the Vilespine Slayer or to proc and Explosive Runes.
Yeah.
This is probably just going to be Kirin Mage plus the Explosive Runes here for longer. So now Lojom knows there's 2 secrets up. He knows the scope of the secrets in Longer's deck, but he hasn't actually been able to test for either of these secrets just yet. So this is going to require some maneuvering here for him. Looks like 2 Explosive Runes, 2 Counterspell, 1 Ice Block.
This isn't the kind of hand that Longer wishes he ends up with. He hasn't gotten any damage early, and now his hand is kind of a bit too slow with all these, minions. Not a lot of spells going till, a little bit later in the game. Once Rogue starts pulling ahead on board, if he does, then you never want to really just keep playing minions into it. You want some kind of like AoE from Primordial Glyph or being ahead early.
On the bright side, he only takes 1 damage off of the Explosive Runes because of Animated Armor's effect, but he was forced to give it up when it could have been potentially really useful later on.
Yeah, Lojom might run out of stuff, though. Again, I guess I kind of favor Mage in longer games because they're a little bit more flexible with their mana, because of cards like Primordial Glyph and just all the draw a Mage has, like Aluneth and effectively Archaeologist and Mad Scientist both draw from your deck. Secrets, whereas Rogue might run out of things. Lojom's close to running out of things. He has about 3 more turns worth of stuff to play. I believe Longer kind of feels like he has 3 more turns left of stuff to play, but I think his top decks are better.
Yeah, I think so. He's got Aluneth in the deck as well as just more burn that Lojom can't prevent from going face. He has no healing in the deck.
Maybe not the pickup that Lojom wants. It is a lot of damage, but kind of weird here.
Yeah, he's not trying to race here. He's trying to control the game. He's trying to do what he wanted to do by playing anti-aggro decks. And unfortunately, there's very few ways to straight up counter an aggro mage.
Yeah.
If you're not playing Eater of Secrets, if you're not playing Khazad Mystic, not a whole lot you can do.
Oh, I like the face play. Gets the 5. He does get punished if there's a 1-drop plus Vilespine, but as this game has been played out, it's unlikely that Lojom could still have a 1-drop in his hand.
Yeah, he probably would have played it.
Yeah.
Looking at Tar Creeper, SI7 Agent onto the Archaeologist, and then Lojom has to decide, does he want a full trade here? If he does, he'll be left with just the Tar Creeper on the board.
I guess he kind of has
agent,
to.
Of course.
He doesn't ever want to give the Kirin Mage a trade into the Tar Creeper, a 5/5 into a 3/5. I think he's forced to trade. Although I guess he could hero power it after.
Yeah.
But your life is very valuable as a rogue against Mage with no healing. Ice block pickup, not really what Longer wants. It should come in handy in a longer game, but the problem is Longer wants some cards, some minion controller right now. So
Lojom is not playing Myra's Unstable Element in this deck. So he doesn't have a card that he can draw that would just instantly get him a bunch more resources.
Right, this version isn't the Kingsbane version. It's more of a standard odd list. So
that's still a little bit too expensive to use with anything else in his hand, actually. And he can't just dagger down the Sorcerer's Apprentice because of the Frostbolt.
Oh, look at this. I like it.
Faces the place.
He wants to save the...
Oh my
gosh.
Oh,
wow. I want to see what he does here because I think he wants to save the Vilespine for the combo activator. Maybe the same for SI7 Agent. So this turn he just decides to Leroy it out.
I think he can... Yes, trading a 5-drop into a 2-drop seems like a huge overuse of resources, but you can absolutely justify it in this matchup. I do like him going face here, though. It seems like Longer is sort of running out of gas, and if Lojom senses that, then, you know, maybe he can actually grind this one out.
Certainly the line he's going for. They're both kind of going for They're both racing.
Man.
Longer doesn't care. He has the ice block.
Ooh.
Oh, that's potentially good. You either decide to Fungalmancer, you know, 1 minion here, or you decide to lose the SI7 Agent's Battle Cry.
Yeah. Does he want to take the 3 damage? I suppose he could hold the Fungalmancer and just go for straight up using the SI Agent Battle Cry on the Sorcerers this turn.
Okay, this makes sense. 6 to the face, of course.
Probably dagger down the Whelp, I would think. Okay.
Maybe there's a chance that there's no secret that's pulled.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I guess.
Yeah.
Just this way, I guess, force out the hero power.
Oh, this is close. Fireball, not quite there yet, but you know, there's ice blocked by some time. Lojom has... Okay, so let's see. Lojom has
12?
14 damage, counting the weapon. Right, so...
Well, the Leroy's going to die.
Okay.
So I'm counting 6 on board, plus the 4 from the Fungalmancer and 2 from the dagger.
Yeah, I was thinking if Longer can just link all face and not trade for Leroy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But it looks like that's not possible. Yeah.
So he is very close to being able to pop the block.
Yeah, 1 damage off from popping the block. Even 1 turn earlier, popping the block can change the game so much. You know,
yeah, it's
one,
huge.
One return is... Oh, fireball the minion.
I don't know that ever wins Longer the game. That's a tough call there to make.
Yeah, I think Longer is trying to draw Aluneth, and he's trying to buy himself as much time as possible for the Aluneth.
If he finds Aluneth, then the fireball there is correct, because he will just win long term. But if he's going for like second fireball top deck into Frostbolts, then obviously you want that fireball going face.
Yeah, especially with an explosive runes, right? That fireball going face plus the explosive runes could, you know, that's a lot of damage that was missed there.
So now Lojom's trying to decide, does he want to take 4 with this Fungalmancer and keep the Hench Clan Thug up? Or does he want to take 3 and lose the Thug? Either way, he has to take damage here if he wants to win the game. Feels pretty bad, but at least now he's able to pop the block on the following turn, hopefully, and then, in his mind, win the game on the following turn after that.
Torch pickup, that might, let's see... That sets up for some top decks, right? That's a fireball range, or even a roaring torch at 7 exactly. So Longer has some outs.
Yeah, I have to send that face to set up for lethal, plus Lojom can pop the block no matter what, even if you do Forgotten Torch and kill off the Hench Clan Thug.
Obviously, hindsight is 20/20, but if that fireball went face, I don't think the clock would have actually changed with 1 more Valspine. I'm not sure. Maybe the Fungalmancer would have had another buff and it might have changed the clock as well. So
I'm not positive if he would have been able to pop on the turn prior or not.
Oh, that's a glitch.
Oh, jeez. Okay, Pyroblast, Fireball, Ice block.
Yeah.
That's about it.
That's not
gonna do it.
it.
Oh, man. That was close. So, okay, if he'd sent the Fireball face, there would have been a Vilespine on board. That Vilespine would have been buffed by the Fungalmancer. 5 additional damage would have been pushed.
I forgot if he was at 6 or 5.
Or if he was at 5.
Right.
I think he was at 6.
Me too. I think he was at 6.
I think it might have been 1 off.
Yeah.
So, had he hit face with the Fireball, I think he would have won.
Right. Correct. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
But that was certainly, you know, lines to look out for. I think it's because of the explosive runes. Maybe he forgot about the runes, because if you just fireball face and you don't have the runes, you're not actually that close. But if you count the explosive runes, you're super close already. You know?
Even if you're thinking this runes might be 2 or 3 damage, then suddenly you're a Frostbolt away instead of a Fireball away. So that was a really close one. Maybe it could have been played slightly different by Longer there, but yeah, again, hindsight is 20/20. But we are now tied up 1-1. Longer has gotten a win with his Paladin, Lojom now with his Odd Rogue, and when we come back, we are going to be getting into game number 3. Things are currently all tied up at 1-1 between Longer and Lojom. The winner of this match will be moving on to the finals to play against Mooner for the title of 2019 Wild Open Champion. We've got Paladin and Rogue out of the way for Longer and Lojom respectively, and that leaves Longer with his aggro mage, which we just saw actually lose the game against the odd rogue from Lojom. Really close matchup, but unfortunately for Longer, it just did not go his way. Now we've got Longer left on that mage and his shaman, Lojom with the aggro druid and his paladin deck, which is just your standard odd paladin. I am personally really excited to see this druid. I'm interested in how it is going to perform. And before we went into that matchup, I was saying Lojom really wanted to hit that mage with either his paladin or his druid. Didn't really matter. He wanted to take advantage of this mage deck. And now that he was able to actually win with the rogue, which looks like it wasn't necessarily a guarantee, I think he's going to be able to do that.
I agree. I like Lojom's chances from here as well. It feels like both of his decks are pretty well suited to fight against both of Longer's decks. I especially feel like the mage is going to have a hard time against the rest of Lojom's decks, because lack of AoE, there's no arcane missiles, no Cinderstorm. So when you're going against things like Pally, Druid, they're both swarm decks, right? And when you're playing a swarm deck with no AoE, then you're oftentimes either relying on early minion trades with no mana worm. Now that's a lot harder.
Yeah.
And or like primordial glyph stuff. And that's always very iffy to be relying too much on the RNG part of that. So.
Well, it is going to be the druid up first for Lojom, and Longer's going to say, I'm going to hold back on this mage for now, and he's actually just going to bring out the even shaman, a deck that we've seen have kind of a middling performance so far this tournament. Even shaman, prior to the Flame Tongue nerfs, was easily one of the best decks in Wild. Lots of these players, I'm sure, ran up even shaman in Legend to be able to even qualify for this tournament. But now they're having to find cards to put in place of Flame Tongue Totem. You can see for Longer that's Whirling Zap-O-Matic, and it's just not been nearly as good.
Right. I like Lojom's decision here to hold back on Corsair. There's potential Jade Claws in turn 2, so you might be able to eat that charge. Longer takes another line. Oh, and punished for this.
No.
It's the caster curse. It's the caster curse.
Dang it, Strife. You know the power that we have now.
Oh,
that
no.
hurts. That really, really hurts. Not just that Lojom now has to pay mana for the patches to be played, but that could have been any other card in his deck. And frankly, he needs other cards right now. His hand is super buff heavy, and he needs minions to play before those buffs can actually present real damage.
Right. Especially since Mark of the Lotus is often countered by the devolve. It takes away the buffs, turning him into other minions. I guess forced to make this line. At least you get a value trade here, right? When you do the Mark here. I'm kind of surprised to see no coin Corsair before, because you effectively get a 2/3 instead of a 1/2. But maybe he wants to save it for the charge, like the Jade Claws charge.
Clearing up the Wrath of Air totem, maybe to play around Maelstrom Portal here.
That's actually a correct line, I feel, because you can use your health as a resource when you're playing aggro versus aggro, so you don't necessarily care about taking 6 damage here, and you also don't care about Whirling Zap-O-Matic trading for patches. It's not exactly a good value trade either, so you're not really losing much here, and you're gaining the potential of blanking out some of the spell power stuff and getting a free value trade, so I definitely like that line that Lojom takes.
Potentially a little bit punished here by the devolve and specifically the healing totem, because now Zap-O-Matic's going back up to 2 health. Lojom is going to have to find some way to kill it. Direwolf Alpha, though, is a reasonable way to do that. But really, Longer just wanted to not overload on that turn. Jade Claws was obviously super clean, but Piloted Shredder is slotted for turn 4, and he didn't want to have to disrupt that at all.
Yeah, to be fair, looking at this matchup, I'm beginning to think more and more that this matchup is incredibly shaman favored. I
forgot about Devolve being a card.
Yeah, Devolve counters your whole deck, right?
Yeah, it's easy to overlook that one.
Like, imagine living mana and then you get Devolve. Oh, no.
Oh, jeez.
Devolve Maelstrom.
Devolve is just really, really good, because the Druid just they have one board, essentially. One board that they invest everything into, and then they need to kill you with that one board, otherwise they're going to fall way behind. And it is a lot easier for the shaman to deal with that board than I was giving it credit for.
Yeah, I think you need a fast opening followed by either them not having it or followed by Jeeves to refill.
Yeah.
If your hand's stuck like this, drawing patches, having double Savage Roar with not being able to leverage a board, now Lojom just has nothing from this point on. He has just 2 Savage Roars and a coin in his hand.
That just looks like he's playing a really bad arena deck.
Oh yeah. Not too. I wouldn't be surprised to see some like Hero Power Thing from below. 5/5's pretty good here. Even some Jade Claws line. I actually like Jade Claws plus Totem Golem. The longer you can wait on your thing below, the more effective discount you get on it. So.
I think Jade Claw's Totem Golem is fine this turn because it's still going to discount the thing from below enough to be played next turn, even with the overload.
Yeah. Lojom needs some big top decks, and what can you get at this point? Even if you get Jeeves, you basically have to dump your Savage Roars before playing them. So.
Well.
Yeah.
There's just really nothing that he can do. Every minion in this deck is 3 mana or below.
You can coin Savage Roar here, but there's no. That's not any different than just hero powering at this point. You get to kill an extra totem or 1/1 with the Savage Roar.
But the Jade Claws is going to kill the Bloodsail no matter what.
Yeah. I guess Lojom's best chance is to top deck Living Mana into the Savage Roars, but you won't have mana for the Savage Roars.
No. And you would only get 5 of the Living Mana tokens as well.
Yeah.
And there's a Wrath of Air totem on the board now, so if Longer just even has a Maelstrom portal, then suddenly that's gone. And I think he's only actually playing 1 copy of Living Mana.
Yeah, it was 1 copy, so.
There's good old Living Roots.
That's a card I kind of miss. I like the flexibility of Living Roots. It's one of the most flexible cards. Druid's always been flexible, but that one in particular, both able to generate minions and removal. Yeah,
just having Fandral Staghelm at the same time too, as like Living Roots and Wrath. It's really good. So Lojom is going to dump his hand here to clear up the thing from below. And now if he draws Jeeves, he can maybe draw a couple of additional cards.
He's hoping that Longer is stuck with all reactive cards. Maybe something like Crackles, Devolves, and Maelstroms. Thing is, even those reactive cards will, hit Lojom's next minions. So.
And those cards will kill him eventually.
The Crackles will kill him. Crackle coming down for 7? No, it was 4. Bit unlucky. Shouldn't matter.
Yeah, you kind of want those Crackles to low roll when you don't need them to high roll.
You can cash in your RNG for later, right?
Yeah, exactly. Save those 6s and 7s for when it really matters.
Yeah. I want to see, though, going for these old... remember back then when people played Shredder, you'd always kind of pray for Doomsayer?
Yes, 100%. Oh, man, those were the days. And when they hit, like, Shielded Minibot instead, he just raged.
Yeah. Okay, looks like kind of winding down. It might even be lethal this turn. Spell power, both spells here. Actually, it is lethal unless Longer gets the lowest roll 4. Okay.
All right, that's going to do it. Longer's going to take game number 3 here with the Even Shaman versus the Druid. Yeah, I think we just didn't give enough credit to that Shaman in that matchup. I was looking particularly at how Lojom could strand the Mage, and I still do think that's possible, but overlooking the Shaman a little bit there. So the Druid, not great against the Shaman. That makes sense. But the Mage still could struggle a little bit here, I think, as it is just the Mage left for Longer, as well as the Paladin and the Druid for Lojom, both of which can swarm the board very quickly and potentially take advantage of the Mage not having really that much of removal aside from minions and like the occasional Frostbolt and Fireball, which they don't really want to use for removal. They want that to go face. So regardless here, Lojom's going to have to win with both of his decks. It doesn't really matter what he queues with. And Longer's just going to have 2 tries to get wins with that Mage deck.
Yeah, this is still a deceptively close match, just because it's always interesting when you have 2 good matchups, but, one, like 2v1 in that kind of situation, because, the odds, like, even though you have 2 good matchups, odds are their weak deck is still going to beat one of your decks at one point. I don't know exact percentage probability odds for like it to be like a 50-50 with two advantageous matchups. I believe if you have like two like 66% matchups, it probably is pretty close to 50-50 overall, but that's just me making stuff up, so we'll see.
The point being, even if you have two 40% matchups, you're still more likely to win one of those games than your opponent is to win two. And obviously, we don't have the numbers in front of us to tell you exactly what the breakdowns are for these matchups. And I don't even know that there are many examples of aggro mage versus aggro druid in the meta right now, because the druid's just not all that prevalent. But Lojom is going to queue up the paladin first, maybe thinking that he just wants to get one of the easier matchups out of the way. Either way, this is quite good for the paladin, especially when the mage draws like that. Mage needs Arcanologist into Kirin Mage plus Secret. They need to have the early minion pressure to be able to combat these recruits, and this is not really the way to do it. The Arcanologist is at least a start.
Yeah, there's actually a curve for longer here with the Arcanologist, because you can go Arcanologist. I guess Arcanologist is like a one-man army as far as curving goes, but you still want support for that, like Kirin Mage and let's see, what is this card? Oh, he doesn't even run it. The one mana.
The lackey.
Yeah, the lackey. He doesn't even run it. So okay. Still okay. This is interesting because you might want to put Ice Block here to activate your Valet. You can't expect Explosive Runes to not pop often, so you don't get the Valet off. But the Explosive Runes is a card where you want to play early compared to Ice Block generally. You know what? I like this play because a lot of times on turn 3, Pally's not playing a minion. They might just be playing a weapon or a spell or something. So you're developing the explosive runes for later while still being able to Medea's Valet next turn. Which is
this worked out really well for longer. Obviously having to coin first, because if this is counterspell and you just rip the muster for battle and that gets countered, then suddenly Lojom is incredibly far behind. So going for the coin there, he can still make up that mana with the Blessing of Might, take a trade, and just start building up the board.
Yeah, Longer decides to play out his 5/5 here. I think Lojom, I'm kind of a fan of just potentially leaving up this 5/5. I guess Seal Champions makes the trade super easy, but I could see him just going wide if he didn't have this and just trying to bluff out a Quartermaster or something. 5/5 is not really doing that much against a bunch of 1/1s if you just keep going wide. But yeah, that's Seal Champions does some good work here.
And he can just drop the Lothab on the following turn. To me, it looks like he's trying to balance the board presence on Longer's side while still building up his own big board for a Purifier's Maul. The second that he's able to hit that Purifier's Maul, he's going to very likely not lose the board from that point on.
That's a really good point. I really like, if you look at it from a Lothab perspective, Lothab is a minion where when you drop Lothab, they pretty much have to follow with a bunch of minions and not spells. So what you can do is Lothab turn 5 and then turn 6 find some kind of Purifier Maul. Your Lothab's very likely still alive. I don't think the runes is ever procced actually. Right? There's still like explosive runes here.
Yeah, I don't think he actually played a minion.
Maybe Lojom actually has to do that next turn somehow and just maybe proc the runes with something smaller. Too bad his Quarter Creeper's still at 1. What if you trade in your 1/1 and then Quarter Creeper before Lothab? It's definitely a potential play.
It's a little awkward, but it would allow the Lothab to come down this turn. Looks like Lojom is just going to favor maybe going Glowtron and Lothab on the next turn, and then being able to clear up the Medea's Valet right here.
Yeah, so now I can drop Quarter Creeper into the explosive runes. It's probably one of the ideal targets. You're not taking too much damage, so that's nice. Only 1 damage.
This is an awkward hand for Longer. He wants these spells to go face, but he can't use them for that yet.
Yeah, it's always the problem when you end up with against this deck, right? Most of their creatures are these small 1/1s, and you have Frostbolts, Torches, none of which you really ever want to cast on a 1/1.
That's really why there is a lot of merit, I think, to running Cinder Storm, to running Arcane Missiles, maybe Shooting Star in certain scenarios, but we're not seeing any of these mages running those cards. I think instead of Sorcerer's Apprentice in a lot of cases. That could be much more useful.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the kind of like the nerf to Mana Worm, right? Those kind of
really
cards went really well with Mana Worm, and now with Mana Worm gone, it's like people don't really want to run Arcane Missiles anymore. They just want to go for the more, bulky spells now. So.
Bulky spells. Well, regardless, he's going to have to play catch-up here, and Primordial Glyph is maybe the way to do it. If he can find a Blizzard, if he could find a Flame Strike, something to clean up the board.
Okay, so this turn is pretty telling with how Longer played. He decides to develop an Ice Block and just go face. This kind of means that he's basically trying to burn out Lojom from this point forward. I mean, it makes sense. His whole hand is Frostbolts, and Lojom's whole board is 1/1s at that point. This Lotheb is kind of a disaster for Longer, right? His whole hand is spells now. And what is he going to do next turn? Play a Sorcerer Apprentice and Hero Power?
He certainly doesn't want to. Yeah, that turn was essentially telegraphing that Longer wants to play Primordial Glyph and look for burn. He wants to find Fireball, Frostbolt, Forbidden Torch, something like that. But this Lotheb is going to throw him off of doing pretty much everything this turn, so he can spend 7 mana and Frostbolt face. He can just drop a Sorcerer's Apprentice and ping, but none of these options are good.
Yeah, I like either the ping or Primordial Glyph for 7. You don't want to waste your Sorcerer Apprentice right now because you want to play with a bunch of spells. So even though 7 mana Primordial Glyph isn't good, but it's just developing something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a ping is developing 1 damage. You can play Glyph for free once you play a Sorcerer, pretty much. So it doesn't really matter too much to play out the Glyph early.
Lojom does find a Quartermaster, so that's going to be a significant damage buff on his board.
Yeah.
If he can even play it. His board is full right now.
He's starting lethal even without the Quartermaster, so Longer has 2 turns here, right, to burn Lojom out. It's certainly still possible. Primordial Glyph is super powerful.
Ooh, Firelands Portal. Or second Ice Block.
Those are probably some very good options here. Here is 1 Ice Block, right? Maybe it's probably better to get another Firelands Portal in this situation.
Maybe. Firelands Portal's really expensive, though.
Yeah. One thing is Longer's hand is very small mana cost, so you can kind of take an expensive card and next turn throw all the other burn. You can also go for the Dream and Firelands Portal into Leroy. It's 11
That's
damage.
That's true. You can.
That's enough damage to win, I think.
You can also get Doomguard, actually.
Oh, you're right. That's 10 damage.
Things you could grab.
11 with the ping, two Frostbolts and a Fireball top deck. Any charge minion would actually do it, I believe. One of those big charge minions.
He does favor the Firelands Portal here.
Oh, it's going to trade.
Oh, Ventrico Mercenary. Makes his minions more expensive. Okay, so file that away. There's only 6 damage on the board now, but with Quartermaster in hand, Lojom can still pop block. But he does have to clear the board as well. So can he deal 10 damage to face while also putting 8 damage into minions?
Yeah, the answer is actually no, right? He can kill one of the minions and pop the block. He can, or kill both minions and leave Longer at something low. I mean, it doesn't really matter where they're at 10 or 2. It only really matters if you pop the block or not, right? In this situation, because your board is so strong, you would just be able to pop the block next turn regardless of what their life is at.
I think I favor popping block here and leaving the Sorcerer's Apprentice.
I agree. I think it's like leaving up Sorceress is scary, but your opponent's on very low economy with 3 cards in hand, so Sorceress is unable to get a ton of value, and the extra turn seems scarier in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. So this would need to be a Glyph off the top, or there's only 1 Ice Block in the deck, and that's gone. So yeah, Glyph off the top.
Glyph off the top for potential lethal opportunities, maybe, or even just another Ice Block. Yeah,
that's not gonna do it. Lojom gonna tie things up 2-2, and we're going to game number 5 here. So it is going to be Longer's Bird Mage up against Lojom's Aggro Druid now. And this was kind of the position that we were thinking this series would end up in. The Mage is the weak link for Longer, and Lojom is trying to exploit it as much as he can with his 2 remaining aggro decks, which do a fairly good job against Mage. So this Druid, there is a chance that Longer gets a start that's like Mad Scientist, Arcanologist, Kirin Tor Mage right into Cabal Crystal Runner, and can just check the board with his own minions. That's kind of the direction I'm seeing this go in. Either that or Primordial Glyph for removal, because there really is only just that one big board that the aggro druid's able to build. And if they lose that big board, then suddenly they have little to no recovery options, actually. They just don't draw cards outside of Jeeves. They don't have big stuff that they're saving to play. It's all 1-drops and 2-drops. So when we come back, it's going to be game number 5 of Longer versus Lojom, and we're going to find out who is going to the finals. Our second semifinal has come down to game number 5. It's going to be the Mage for Longer taking on the Aggro Token Druid from Lojom. And this is everything it comes down to. The winner of this game moves on to the finals to play against Mooner for the title of 2019 Wild Open Champion. Like I said, Aggro Mage for Longer, the Druid for Lojom, super, super aggressive. Who do you think's favored here, Strife?
I definitely think Lojom is favored. He has a final good matchup here with the Druid against the Mage. And the interesting thing is in the grand finals with Mooner waiting for them in the grand finals, I think Mooner wants Lojom to win. Because Lojom has like an anti-aggro list, and Mooner has a lot of these like control-y lists. So if Lojom actually faces Mooner in the grand finals, he might have trouble with all these like Galaka crawlers and all these decks that are kind of more like Pyromancer and his Even Shaman. It's not a really good beatdown card. It's a good anti-aggro card. So.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of clunky stuff that does not want to line up against like Mechathune Warlock, for instance. So obviously Lojom wants to win, but then maybe his matchup in the finals isn't all that good.
Yeah.
This is a really nice starting hand for Lojom, though. He gets to go first, which means he gets to play the first minion of the game, and he's got minions to follow it up. So now he just needs to find those buff cards. Find Mark of the Lotus, Power of the Wild, Savage Roar to follow up the minions he's going to be able to put on board, because it is going to be difficult for Longer to actually deal with these minions for the first couple turns.
Right. Actually, we actually haven't seen Nerubian Eggs and Haunted Creepers in Lojom's deck. I wonder if he has them, because those are some of the bread and butter cards of Wild Token Druid, right?
Yeah, it looks like he's got one Haunted Creeper, which we just haven't seen. No Nerubian Eggs. But I would think if you're playing any token deck, 2 Haunted Creepers is so good. I mean, we saw him in pretty much every Paladin that was ever running Knife Juggler.
I think this goes back to the fact that Lojom's just building his aggro decks as anti-aggro decks. You know, he's choosing to run cards like Druid of the Swarm, being a big taunt, rather than something that Control would have a harder time killing, like Eggs and Creepers. So, Evolving Spores, it is a card that, it's another one of his pump cards, which is what he wants here. Lots of minions in his hand. He can even try to play Living Roots out as minions. Maybe he plays Spores on turn 5 and just tries turn 4 to even bloat up his board even more. Might have to play it into Counterspell, though.
Well, if he saves the Roots for turn 5 with the Spores, he could Roots and then Spores and try and bait out Counterspell that way. And that would be a little bit unfortunate. He'd lose out on 2 minions to adapt, but at least he would guarantee the Evolving Spores activates.
Yeah, I like that a lot, especially since if it's not Counterspell, then you still get the Living Roots before the Spores. It's kind of like one of those win-win situations.
So he's considering trading into the Mad Scientist, but ultimately decides not to.
Yeah, that always kind of changes the ratios for draws, right? Say you don't want to draw secrets as Longer, then if you lose your Mad Scientist, it effectively like dilutes your secret pool in your deck. Yeah. So that's one reason why Lojom decides he doesn't want to trade here. Also, it puts his Dire Mole into ping range.
Oh man. Lojom is not having the best luck with his Pirates today. I think he's drawn patches 2 or 3 times in his series, and that is really unfortunate. But he is going to test for Explosive Runes here. Take the 5 damage if it's there. It doesn't matter. Lojom has life to play with because this game isn't going to go long enough for him to actually die. Either he runs out of stuff or he kills his opponent.
Yeah, I still really like the line here where you save Living Roots next turn. There might be a second counterspell. You're always scared. You don't want your 4 mana spell being counterspelled, so this is nice. Getting extra hero power, playing mana efficient, always something I love to do.
Cannot value the crow. It's a good thing none of these guys are trying to.
Yeah, that's true.
There's absolutely no value in this tournament whatsoever. It's just an aggro slugfest. So this is going to be the opportunity for Lojom to be able to proc the counterspell with Living Roots and then adapt everything on the board with Evolving Spores. He's looking for Divine Shield, +1/+1, +3 attack. These are all good options.
Oh,
he hits the most aggressive of them all.
That has to be the best, right? That's 12 damage.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, jeez.
This is just suddenly 3 1-drops and a 2-drop that are setting up for lethal. And Longer has an ice block, so he's not dead. But how does he really come back from this one? He can clear up 2 of the minions here with Medivh's Valet and the Cabal Crystal Runner.
Yeah, he still loses his block here, it seems. Longer probably barely doesn't turn the corner here. You know, what if you just go face yours Longer? You know that you're going to lose your block anyways, so does it ever make sense just go face instead of trade, set up for some lethal opportunities yourself? Now, I guess
I don't see why not.
It's very weird, though. Yeah.
If you're losing your block no matter what, this is 5 damage that you might as well send face.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's just weird because now Lojom can kind of take a better value trade maybe from one of his minions. Ooh.
He can put Longer to 2 before he pops the block here.
That's definitely better. This way, if you get frozen or something like Frost Nova top decks from glyphs or even anything like that, you have 2-turn clock just from your hero power.
Mm-hmm. Whereas a 4-turn clock is giving Longer so much more time to just be able to straight up kill Lojom, and Lojom saw that because Longer went face for 5 in the previous turn. So this is, well, there's only the 1 ice block in the deck for Longer, so Arcanologist can't pull it, and Longer can't, well, okay, he can clear up the Dire Mole and the Firefly, and then he can freeze the Haunted Creeper.
Right.
And that gives him one more turn.
Right. So this is why getting longer to 2 is perfect, because now he does have this 2-turn clock with just his hero power. Even if he loses his Haunted Creeper next turn, this still makes a lot of sense. Ooh, that's a draw.
That's pretty good. That's a 3-2.
Yeah. Then we have longer set to 1.
Okay. So longer needs Primordial Glyph.
Yeah, this is weird. Oh, maybe ice barrier from a glyph could do it.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah.
Because there's no swipe in the deck. Cabal Crystal Runner's not going to do it, and that means that Lojom is going to be moving on to the finals. So our finals is going to be one representative from China and a representative from Asia Pacific, South Korea specifically. Congratulations to Lojom. It looked like he was behind there for a little bit in that series, but doing what we thought he would do, which was kind of bully that mage a little bit. Really, bring out its weaknesses, and with his anti-aggro decks, be able to end up taking that series in Game 5. Longer played really well, too. He had a really standard lineup that got him this far, so congratulations